Greetings, everyone. Thank you very much for joining this conversation once again. Today is the 4th of May 2025, and as Namibians, the 4th of May is a day on which we commemorate the Kasinga Day. And Kasinga Day, it relates to the day on which many Namibians were brutally killed by the South African Defence Force in a Kasinga camp that was located in a village known as Kasinga in, uh, in Angola. And this is a historic day, and I think many a times we use history as a way to study what happened in the past, but it is also important for us to note that history must also be used as a way to understand our current affairs, as well as perhaps to shape our future, and as well as to avoid past mistakes. That is one of the areas in which history can play a role in avoiding mistakes that we learned that happened in the past, in understanding our current affairs, as well as to shape our future. I think history can play a very important role in that sector. Now, on this day of Kasinga, what I want us to focus on is really to look into our foreign policy as a country. And I think Kasinga Day can be one of the events that we can also use in analyzing our foreign policy, whether or not it is progressive and necessary. Okay, now it's very important for us to know that our foreign policy in terms of our constitution, that is Article 96A, it says that we must take a non-alignment policy. It means that we don't align, with anybody when it comes to issues of international relation. We rather be neutral on things and call for things like, things that are there are things like international laws, are things like promote peace and all of that. That is our position there. We don't align in terms of our foreign policy. But I want us to go back and see that in terms of our own history of colonialism, there is a part of international community that played a role in us getting our independence. That can come in the form of the UN, that can come in communist countries that helped us in terms of resources, manpower, and training in our struggle for independence. And we need to look into that now. In what position were these people when they were helping us? Were they aligned or they were non-aligned? And maybe if everybody in the world had they adopted a non-aligned foreign policy, were we going to get the assistance that we got in terms of getting our independence? In order for us to move forward, is that after the event of Kasinga, where our people were brutally killed, survivors were taken to a lot of countries, including Cuba. And I want us to use Cuba as a case study and perhaps a country that we can learn one or two things from. Because Cuba, under the progressive and revolutionary leadership of Fidel Castro, they played a very important role in our struggle as well as in us achieving our independence. So now, perhaps before we go into the role that Cuba played in our struggle, it is important for us to know what type of a country is Cuba, and perhaps what is their orientation in terms of international relations, what is their position. So now Cuba is or was a communist country, and after their successful revolution of 1959, where Fidel Castro and his comrades and friends happened to take over government, and I think that was one of the very successful revolution in the world. So they also happened to embrace the idea of communism. And in the context that we are focusing now, it's very important for us to look into a few principles of communism that are relevant to our today's discussion. Remember, communism was coined and found by Karl Marx and his comrade and friend Engels, and there are a few things that they were trying to address in terms of that communist manifesto. And in my view, the communist manifesto is the most just and progressive political document I ever read. Like, it's very progressive and it's very just. So what they were trying to address there are three things that communism happened to address. It was economic inequality, it was imperialism, and it was foreign domination. Those are a few things that I found to be very relevant to this discussion that communism tries to address. So now, in terms of the economic aspect of it, communism does accept the idea and understanding that in a capitalist society, there will be big inequality where the capitalists are very rich, where the working class would always be poor, because now the capitalists, they own the means of production, whereby they want to make profit by any means necessary, and they do that by exploiting the working class. Then communism comes in to say we need to come up with a different idea as to how we can address inequality that were brought by that capitalist ideology and approach to the economy. But another aspect was that this thing of imperialism, where different countries want to have, certain countries that they control to form part of their empire as a way and means to enrich themselves. Communism want to address that. They want oppressed people of the world to come together in fighting against imperialism. And then the last aspect is now foreign domination, where communism rather believes that it's not really right for anyone to be dominated and controlled by foreign nation and foreign forces. Now, there is now the idea that Cuba and Fidel Castro have impressed into their approach and, understanding of their international relations and policies. So what then Fidel Castro did by then was to take an international policy of internationalism, whereby Cuba as a country took a position to say that they are not going to start any war anywhere in the world. However, they are going to assist the oppressed people of the world, people who are fighting for their freedom, people who are fighting against imperialism, and people who are going to fight against foreign domination. So that means wherever you are in the world, and you are fighting against foreign domination, you are fighting against imperialism, then Cuba will stand with you and by your side. And generally by then, it was people in Asia, it was people in, Africa, and it was people in Latin America. Those are the people that Cuba happened to stand with, because those are the people who were fighting against foreign domination. That's why now, because of that ideology and orientation, the Cubans happened to take us in when the event of Kasinga took place. Again, it is on that basis that, remember, I think one of the events that might have assisted us in making sure that this South African Defence Force happened to concede to the implementation of Resolution 435 was the Battle of Quito Canavare. I think that was a battle that really convinced this South African apartheid government to say that I think the battles on the ground are getting very hot and it's high time that we give these people freedom. And if you understand properly, the Battle of Quito Canavare, at the center of it was Cuba. They gave us weapons to fight, but they also sent soldiers to come and assist us in that particular battle. But now, when we got our independence on the 21st of March 1990, we happened to be using the constitution, which is supreme, and part of that constitution, it then says in terms of article 96A, says that in terms of our foreign relations, we must then take a non-alignment position. Then we maybe need to ask ourselves, our freedom that we are enjoying now, was it a result of non-alignment foreign policies from those who have assisted us? Or why did we take that position of non-alignment? Okay, remember these communist countries, they really assisted us in terms of resources, in terms of manpower, in terms of training. They played a very important role in assisting us. But now when we got our independence, then we say, no, for us, we are not going to take that position of standing with the oppressed, but we are going to take a position of non-alignment. And it's also very important for us perhaps to say, it is not always a position of the oppressed, but we also need to look at the material condition and see who in the world might be your strategic ally in terms of what is happening in geopolitics and all of that. But if you have these things of non-alignment, that cannot help you. So you need to have strategic partners that you consider to be helpful, to be progressive, to be strategic in terms of what you want to achieve in the world. Okay, and then now we can see that that tension between the West and the East in terms of their interests and ideas and approaches to the world never ended. Is still well and aligned. That's why organizations like NATO that were formed apparently to fight communism, they still exist today. While communism ended in the late 80s, where the Soviet Union happened to collapse, and communism ended by then, because a lot of those countries today, they are not communists, they are socialists. But NATO that was formed to fight communism is still well and alive today. I don't know to fight who, if communism that they wanted to fight happened to fall in the late 80s. And again, if you look into geopolitics today, you will see that organizations like BRICS, they are emerging as a way to fight dominance in the world in terms of politics and in terms of economy. But now, as Namibians, we still are stuck with that foreign policy and orientation of non-alignment. That's why I'm then posing this question to Namibians to say, this foreign policy of non-alignment, is it really progressive? Is it really necessary? Considering our history and what is happening now in geopolitics, do you think we need to be taking that position of non-alignment, or you think we perhaps need to identify progressive forces of the world that we can perhaps enter into partnership that can be helpful in terms of our goals and visions as a country? Do you think we need to do that, or we need to continue with this position of non-alignment where we are neutral on everything, and the only thing that we can do at the international stage is apparently to call for peace, is to call for international law and all of that? But remember, these things of peace and international law, they are at some parts of the world being ignored. Okay? And the world does not have strong mechanisms to ensure that we do have peace, and that countries are not engaging into some sort of activities that infringe, peace and stability in the world. Remember what happened between Russia and Ukraine, what is happening in, between Israel and Palestine. Remember what happened in Libya, for instance. Remember, there are a lot of incidences where these things of international law and peace, they just don't exist in those places. And remember, there are organizations that are emerging now, like your BRICS, for instance, as an alternative to this American and Western dominance. Now, that's why I'm just posing a question to you, that do you think it's necessary for us to continue with non-alignment, or we perhaps need to take a different posture and position where we align ourselves with those who are very strategic in terms of our vision and our position at the international stage? So that is just a conversation that I wanted us to have today around our foreign policy, using our history as a former colonized country, as well as looking at what is happening now in terms of geopolitics and the economy, and things that are, just coming up with now having people like Trump and all of that at the helm of America, and all of that. Do you think it is very important for us to continue being non-aligned, or we perhaps need to align with progressive forces of the world? So that is up to you to make a decision, and let me hear your view about that. And thank you very much for joining this conversation today, and keep on checking this platform, because time to time we will keep on coming in with a conversation around this and that, so that we are able just to continue having this conversation as Namibians. Thank you very much, and I'll be checking the comment section to hear from you.